Welcome everyone to 284 News. My name is Javon Wilson.
I'm Kamal Haynes.
And I'm Ron Grant.
And we are so thrilled and happy to be coming to you live out of the beautiful British Virgin Islands. The content continues via our website, 284media.com.
In today's news, active COVID cases in the BVI increased by 25 and now stands at 50, with hospitalizations rising to 5.
We also see cruise ship companies demanding that the BVI government remove rapid testing protocols upon entry and threatening to go elsewhere.
And the government urged to borrow $100 million from the Social Security Board to bury electricity cables on the ground.
We also see fully vaccinated travelers now forced to take the PCR as well as the rapid antigen test upon entering the territory. The Ministry of Health saying it did not authorize this. And finally, we see Premier Fahie saying that cruise ships cannot be blamed solely for the COVID-19 spike experienced in recent times. We have all the details for these stories and so much more on today's edition of 284 News.
You value traditions. You value music. You value education. Family.
I love you.
Service.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Love. Life. At Popular, we're committed to you and everything our community values. For the things you value the most, count on us. Popular.
A pleasant welcome to one and all. Thank you so much for making time to sit with us on this beautiful Wednesday evening, September 1st, the first day of September, of course, and a promising month of news ahead. My name is Javon Wilson.
And I'm Kamal Haynes. Happy Wednesday to one and all. Well, we start with news of COVID-19, where the British Virgin Islands has recorded a jump in active positive COVID-19 cases from 25 as reported on August 26 to now 50 present cases. But this is according to a dashboard report from the BVI Health Services Authority dated Tuesday, August 31st, which said 27 new COVID-19 cases were recorded while there were 2 recoveries. Well, of the total 50 cases, there are 35 on Tortola, 11 on Virgin Gorda, and 4 on Jos Van Dyke. Where the epidemiological report further analyzed the active cases, revealing that 17 are local cases and 10 from contacts of cases. Where the report further said that the remaining cases were detected from persons who were either entering the territory or about to leave to travel. Well, 12 cases were recorded from persons who were screened on day 0 of their entry into the territory, 1 from the day 4 entry screening, and 3 recorded from the day 7 entry screening, with a total of 7 cases from travel entry for persons who had planned on departing the territory. Well, the report also indicated that an increase of 2 persons being hospitalized to bring the total number to 5. Well, also to note, of those 5 persons hospitalized, all were unvaccinated. Well, meanwhile, the dashboard report also gave an update on the vaccination stats in the territory, showing an increase of more than 750 persons who became fully vaccinated since the last update. Well, the total number of fully vaccinated persons now stands at 13,663 persons, while some 3,523 persons are partially vaccinated. Well, that brings the total number of persons who are both fully and partially vaccinated to 17,186. Well, viewers, the total number of COVID-related deaths remains at 37. Well, Javon, this is some very concerning news. Obviously, in the past few weeks, we would have seen a decrease in the cases and now somewhat of a jump by somewhat 50% in terms of over the last few days.
Absolutely, and of course, a cause for concern and a reminder, a sobering reminder that we ought to be abiding by protocols. Do not let our guards down. And like the Honorable Minister for Health always says, we are not out of the woods as yet. So do what you must, viewers, to keep that number low. As we move on, over the last 24 hours, fully vaccinated travelers entering the territory were mandated to test twice upon arrival at the seaports. Now, viewers, the outraged travelers said they were required to take both the PCR tests as well as the rapid antigen tests at ports of entry without any substantial reason being provided. Now, under current protocols, fully vaccinated travelers are subjected to a mandatory rapid antigen test. Now, viewers, a concerned tourist who contacted our newsroom complained about the new measures. She said, and I quote, "Why are fully vaccinated travelers being now required to take both the rapid antigen test and the PCR test upon arrival? Is this a new policy?" She added that the inconsistency is not only a major deterrent to travel, but also speaks poorly of the authorities tasked to lead the COVID-19 charge. Now, viewers, another tourist provided our newsrooms with tests based on what you're seeing on the screen, both the results from the antigen test as well as the PCR tests and the results from those tests as well to substantiate the claims. Now, upon learning about this, our newsroom contacted the Ministry of Health. However, the representative told us today that this was not authorized by the ministry, nor was it listed in the regulated protocols. Shocking, some might say. Now, to further clarify this, our media house also reached out to the Minister of Health, Honorable Carvin Malone, as well as the acting CEO of BVI Health Services Authority, Mrs. Cedarine Malone Smith. But up to press time, those queries were not responded to. Again, Kamal, I think these are some very troubling allegations, especially for our fully vaccinated travelers who were looking forward to the ease and the accessibility that comes with being fully vaccinated. That rapid antigen test really was a game changer for persons not being able to quarantine in the territory. But here we see persons are now being subjected to both a PCR and a rapid test. The ministry coming forward and saying, we did not authorize this. And of course, in trying to reach out to BVI Health Services Authority, those efforts were futile. But nevertheless, I think these inconsistencies are really showing that we have a lot of work to do.
Indeed, and while the obviously the news may be surprising for some, it is not in terms of a level of miscommunication between the officials. And we would have seen it, especially since the advent of COVID-19, where they are always changing protocols. And 1 week you have one protocol, the next week there's another. And then obviously that information isn't steadily communicated with the persons on the ground level to be able to properly implement these initiatives. And obviously in terms of someone who would have now traveled from, obviously probably hours of travel to get to the BVI and then be shocked with such information, it's additional cost, because I think the last time I checked a PCR test to travel is $100. And then coupled with the $35 you have to pay for the rapid test, that's $135. And then obviously you still have to pay to get transported from the airport to your place of quarantine. All depends on whether you're fully quarantined or partially. And obviously this person would have been fully quarantined, fully vaccinated.
Fully vaccinated.
Since they would have had the option of coming in the first place with the rapid antigen test. So some very concerning news, and we really do hope that this is cleared up as soon as possible.
Absolutely. You mentioned a very key point there, communication, because what we see here yet again, even within the health officials at that particular level between the Ministry of Health and the BVI Health Services Authority, clearly there is a breakdown in communication as to why and who authorized this decision. The decision came from someplace. And of course, the travelers are suffering at the expense of this.
Or maybe it could have been a situation where the particular traveler was unfortunate to meet one particular officer who probably thought that was the rules at hand.
Well, actually, it's two. We've received reports from two persons who are able to confirm this. So I don't think that this is a mistake. I think it is definitely a new decision that was handed down. We are now just now have to figure out who that decision came from, and of course viewers will be keeping you updated on that decision.
But we do hope that issue is resolved as soon as possible. Well, viewers, still ahead, cruise ship companies are now giving the BVI government an ultimatum: remove testing upon entry or else we will not come. And the government urged to borrow $100 million from the Social Security Board to bury electricity cables on the ground. That was from Mark Vanterpool. But these and so much more stories after a word from our sponsors.
Viewers, thank you so much for sticking with us. Now, the international cruise ship industry, a key contributor to the BVI's tourism product, has put immense pressure on the BVI government to remove testing protocols upon arrival. Now, the cruise companies have communicated that the rapid testing upon arrival is a great deterrent, adding that it is impractical and time-consuming. This was revealed in an industry meeting held last night with the transportation fraternity as government and tourism officials sought the advice of taxi operators in regards to the reopening of the cruise pier for cruise calls. Now, present at that meeting was Acting Managing Director of the BVI Ports Authority, Ms. Olivine Maynard, who explained that the measures were quite different on July 1st when the territory welcomed cruise passengers back after over a year. Listening.
On 1st July 2021, the territory successfully welcomed its first passenger cruise ship at the CB Romney Tortola Pier Park, with just over 400 passengers in what is known as a free-flow model, which means the passengers were free to explore our territory as they wish, once the ship met the conditions to sail to our port per the approved protocols. The rationale of the cruise ship's plan was set out by the protocols for the safe acceptance of cruise calls at the cruise pier during a pandemic, which replaces all normal operating procedures until such time as the HEOC advises otherwise, and the return to normal operating procedure is reestablished by the BVI Ports Authority.
So, viewers, based on what Mrs. Maynard said there, tourists disembarking the cruise ships were allowed to roam freely across the territory. However, in light of the COVID-19 spike that was recorded at that time, cruise calls were then subsequently cancelled and otherwise deferred to Anchorage, prohibiting passengers from disembarking the ship. Now, thereafter, Cabinet amended the COVID-19 Control and Suppression Act, which then mandated that all fully vaccinated persons must take a rapid antigen test upon arrival. This decision, however, has been met with major public backlash from the cruise ship industry, according to Mrs. Maynard. Let's watch.
Unfortunately, due to the testing requirements, the cruise lines have indicated that it is impractical, as the time frame to administer tests to hundreds or thousands of passengers would ultimately take hours from their day stop, which is usually less than 8 hours. Further, the physical space and shelter required to administer these tests are not available at the cruise pier. The greatest experience would be negatively impacted. The situation is complex because while coronavirus does not respect national borders, cruise ships most cruises touch more than one country. Therefore, having health and safety protocols in place is important, but they must be workable.
Now, viewers, despite the concerns of this new ultimatum being posed by cruise companies, the taxi operators present at last night's meeting collectively called on government to allow the cruise ships back into our ports. This cross-section of the tourism industry, of course, depends directly on tourists to make a living. They challenged the government to be more proactive and urged them to put proactive protective measures, that is, in place with the requisite training to equip them for the reopening and, of course, possible future spikes. Now, while opting for less stringent protocols, some residents are also adamant that the relaxation should be done across the board. Now, adding to the discussion virtually, was the at-large representative and junior minister of trade, Honorable Shireen Flax-Charles, who said we ought not to discriminate against certain travelers. Honorable Flax-Charles said, and I quote, "What is good for the goose is good for the gander. Overnight charter, hotel, villa, cruise ship all should have the same protocol. End of story. We cannot discriminate against our visitors and our residents. Residents, too, have to test on arrival. Now, during last night's meeting, the CEO of the Cyril B. Romney Tortola Pier Park, who was also present, Mr. Vance Lewis, reminded the territory that the cruise tourism industry is a key contributor to the territory. Mr. Lewis said that the cruise industry reeled in over $66 million in 2016, our best year to date, reflecting 7% of the GDP. That year, the territory welcomed 700,000 guests, with an estimated $78.11 spent per passenger. This, Mr. Lewis says, reiterates the importance of the industry and why we need to carefully consider a prompt but safe reopening. Now, the Premier of the Virgin Islands, Honorable Andrew A. Fahie, said that while it is not an easy decision, we really have to find ways to save the economy. The Premier expressed concerns of refusing cruise calls at this juncture, adding that it may pose challenges in attracting ships back to our shores in the future. The concept of a COVID bubble, viewers, was also placed back on the table as the government considers a reopening. However, some residents believe that this will only support select businesses, of course, subsequently locking out a greater cross-section of the tourism industry and other interconnected businesses. Now, the Cabinet of the Virgin Islands is now tasked with making a decision on whether to allow cruise ships back without the entry testing protocol.
Javon, before we move on to my next story, this is a very interesting topic, very interesting news actually coming out of last night's emergency meeting for the Ministry of Transportation. I have a lot of concerns with this, with a lot of this, the information brought out in this press release, because the press release from the meeting, because in one instance, as we would have turned to your first story, we've seen persons being asked for both testings, the PCR and also the rapid antigen test, and in another instance, no. We're saying, okay, because we want the cruise industry in the territory, we're going to exempt these persons from testing at all. Exactly. Now, if you would check if you go back to the report, my first story with the active cases in the territory,
yes,
you would have seen a number of these persons testing positive for COVID-19 on day 0 entry travel screening, and also a number of persons who would have left the territory, wanted to leave the territory, and would have also tested positive in terms of in their travel screening to leave the BVI. And that is very concerning. So you're saying because the cruise ship is all the passengers in the cruise ship are fully vaccinated, we're going to exempt them?
Exactly.
We would have seen several cruises this year since the pandemic, since the resumption of the cruise industry, fully vaccinated cruise ships with persons fully vaccinated and still testing positive.
Absolutely.
With those cruise ships having to cancel call for the rest of the planned trip. So it's
so many concerns. I completely agree with you. One of the things that came up in particular is whether as a territory we have the infrastructure to handle an outbreak, because a very important point you just made, fully vaccinated travelers are still effectively transmitting the virus. So then how then are we able to deal with a possible spike that may happen with 1 or 2 travelers getting off the cruise ships, interacting with the general public, infecting our population, and then subsequently leaving? We are left with that issue. And in our subsequent story, of course, we're going to discuss how that will affect not only our human resources, but our medical resources as well, which clearly has been exhausted based on recent times.
And we would have also had a glimpse of that, not to really drag on this story, but we had a glimpse of that with the recent spike we had with over 1,600 cases.
Yes.
And we didn't have a situation where we had persons roaming in the territory without being tested. So when it comes to in terms of flashing numbers in all of getting an initiative is very concerning. As you would have stated, Mr. Lewis would have said $66 million in 2016. But are you going to sacrifice the country or the people of the territory for the economy in terms of dollars?
It's a hard balance to strike, and I know a tough decision for the cabinet to make. I know definitely what persons are calling for is, whatever, like Honorable Shireen Flack says, whatever is good for the goose is good for the gander, because what's going to happen is our overnight visitors will be severely offended by this decision. If cruise ship passengers are allowed to pass through but they are required to test.
Indeed. Well, viewers, moving on. Former minister responsible for electricity is calling on the government to borrow approximately $100 million from the Social Security Board to allow the BVI Electricity Corporation to bury their power line cables underground. Well, senior opposition legislator Mark Vanterpool made a plea during a recent sitting of the House of Assembly while discussing the topic of sustainable development in the BVI. Well, Vanterpool said by using the method of burying electricity cables underground, it will enable the BVI's economy to continue to function in the event of another devastating hurricane. Take a listen.
We need to build the roads, Mr. Minister of Transport. But while we are building those roads, the Electricity Corporation, Minister responsible for electricity, I hope you're listening, needs to bury the main lines in the roads and take down the poles so that the next time there's a big hurricane, we don't have to be out of power for 6 months. That is sustainable development. That is what we should borrow money from the Social Security Board to do. Because our economy wouldn't suffer for that long period anymore. That is sustainable development. Borrow $100 million from the board, give it to electricity, tell them dig up all the roads, the main roads.
Vanterpool also recounted a horrid moment following the hurricanes of 2017 where the community of Carrot Bay was without electricity and water for 6 months. Well, as the minister responsible for electricity at the time, Vanterpool said he was rightfully scolded by residents and believes the time is now for the government to make the decision to go ahead with getting the initiative started.
There was no power at the time in Carrot Bay. There was no water, Mr. Speaker. And I was quite rightly reprimanded, upper-handed by the people in Carrot Bay. One reporter said, Lord, when I went outside, she said, Lord, Minister, I could see it on the face, I was going to cry. She was right. The people were 6 months later without power or without water. That wasn't fair to them. I had to take the heat. Mr. Speaker, I'm not reprimanding the government here because the government is doing their job. But all I'm suggesting and recommending is that we borrow some money from wherever we have to borrow it. Don't wait for the British government or our kind of government. Come on, people. It's our business. It's our territory. We're the ones who will suffer. We're the ones who are not going to have any economic stimulation. Let's stop waiting for the British government and waiting for this government and waiting for that approval. Let's use our Social Security money and do what we have to do.
Viewers, Vanterpool, who is also the representative for the 4th District, also revealed that an estimate for the project amounting to $75 million was provided by the BVI Electricity Corporation during his tenure as minister, where he believes the estimate can act as a base point for government to allow them to have an idea on the budget that will be needed to tackle the project as soon as possible.
The estimate given to me at the time, Minister of Electricity now, by the Electricity Corporation was $75 million to bury the main lines throughout the territory. Bury them under the ground. Knock down the poles. When the wind comes, them lines are up and down and popping the poles. The only thing I had to fix after the hurricane is the line that moved from the main lines to the villages. That could happen in 30 days. We have to build an infrastructure to sustain us during disasters like hurricanes. We can't bury our nose in the ground and hope that the season come again and none hit us. Past us, it went to Bahamas. This one passed us, it went to Haiti. It don't hit us again. Let us build a sustainable situation so that when it hits us again, we go down but we get back up quickly. That's all I'm saying. I hope it ain't going to deaf ears, Mr. Speaker.
Viewers, Vanterpool believes this project, once completed, will be a key aspect of the BVI's infrastructure during disasters such as hurricanes. Well, Javon, this was another topic today that we would have seen our readers and our viewers in terms of who would have commented on Facebook.
Yes.
Questioning whether this spending so much money to bury cables is actually a good decision at this time.
Well, again, it all comes back to timeliness. Yes, these are priorities of the territory and certainly what we ought to be looking for. But when you look at even the comments, like you mentioned, one viewer saying, listen, how about us prioritizing education? Indeed. You know, our children needs to be in better infrastructures and they need us now more than ever. And we are focused on, you know, burying cables. And, you know, come on, when we think about resilience, building resilience, especially within this particular sector. Yes, this is a necessary requirement, but it really boils back down to our priorities of the moment and whether this money is being best spent. $100 million to bury cable at this time. But viewers, up ahead of the break, the Premier is now saying that cruise ships were not to be blamed or should not be blamed solely for the COVID-19 spike that we saw in recent times. We have all the details for that story when 284 News returns.
The wait is over. CCT Fire is here. Experience ultra-fast downloads, seamless streaming, and even more reliable connectivity on an all-new fire-blazing super-fast CCT Fiber network. CCT Fire. Bring it home and upgrade today.
Is business slow, cash flow down, hosting an upcoming event? We can help. Advertise with 284 Media and take your business or event to the next level by enhancing your present marketing and messaging strategies. Allow our team of experts to create a personalized ad that sets your business apart from all the rest. This could be your business or event. So, what are you waiting for? Contact our marketing team at 284media at cctbvi.com. Advertising with us works.
Viewers, welcome back to 284 News. Now, the Premier of the Virgin Islands, Honorable Andrew Fahie, said that the recent COVID-19 spike that resulted in a peak of over 1,600 cases was already on the rise, with high projections even before the last cruise ship docked here in the territory. The Premier was responding to concerns that the spike may have been as a result of fully vaccinated persons disembarking the ship without having to be administered a rapid antigen test. Premier Fahie made the disclosure last evening at the Transportation for Hire industry meeting to discuss the reopening of the cruise ship port. Let's watch.
The spike came in, and there's something I need to say about the spike. Check it out. The date when the ship came, the spike was going up. So you can't say that the ship brought the spike. It come on a time. I remember that statistics there because it was rising at that time. It was rising. So it would not be accurate to say that the ship caused a spike. And to verify that, check the days before the ship came and the day the ship came and see how much those numbers were, and you'll see that it had done start to rise. And also, it had the prediction from the health team that what they're seeing, this is going to mushroom if something is not done to control it, up to possibly 5,000 cases with plenty deaths. So we knew that before the ship docked. So to put it all on the ship, because we said that we took our vaccinated, would be a fast stretch if you look at it from an analytic point of view.
Now, viewers, residents have expressed concerns about the free flow method, which now allows fully vaccinated tourists to venture on land without the requisite on-entry testing. Now, according to official data, fully vaccinated persons can still transmit the COVID-19 virus. During last night's live discussion, one resident said, and I quote, "We will without doubt get more outbreaks if the cruise ship passengers are allowed ashore without testing, further compounded by if our taxi or tour drivers are not mandated to get vaccinated. There are so many rapid test options now, and there will be more. How is it that the cruise ships are dictating to the BVI that their guests be exempted from testing? That is blackmail and has been the practice of this industry for decades." End of quote. Now, viewers, residents are also worried about future outbreaks that may exhaust our human and medical resources in the event the tourists are not mandated to take that test upon arrival. Again, Kamal, so many concerns, valid concerns, I believe. Residents are determined to save the economy, but of course they want to ensure that it is not at the expense of their life or the lives of the people around them. And I think, again, really doubling back to the very tough, the very difficult balancing decision that the Cabinet of the Virgin Islands has to make.
Indeed, and it goes back to what I would have stated earlier. Are you going to gamble in terms of gamble with the economy versus the lives of many. We would have seen 36 total deaths within a short space of time. We don't obviously want to relive those moments again. But viewers, that's all we have for today's news roundup. I'm Kamal Haynes.
And my name is Javon Wilson. See you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.